Hello, everyone. On behalf of the 6th District PTA, I would like to welcome you to the third of our Parenting in a Pandemic speaker series. Tonight, we are pleased to host Beth Proudfoot, who will be speaking to us on the topic, Is Sheltering in Place Creating a Powder Keg in Your Home? Beth Proudfoot is a marriage and family therapist with over 30 years of experience working with children and their families. She is a co-author of The Magic of Positive Parenting and has spoken at conferences for the National Center of Self Esteem, the NAEYC, California Mothers of Twins, and the California Council of Parent Participation Nursery Schools, in addition to speaking to schools and daycares throughout California. Beth is also the mother of 3 grown children and brings a wealth of personal experience and a much needed sense of humor to her parenting advice. And now, Beth Proudfoot.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here with all of you. I'm sorry I can't see all of your beautiful faces, and I hope that you will take advantage of doing a little bit of interaction by going ahead and do put some questions or comments or additional ideas that you have into the Q&A, and we'll try to do our best to make an effort to get to everybody's questions and comments as I go. I do have a lot to share with you though, so let's get started. I'm going to actually be sharing a PowerPoint with you, so you have something to look at besides my talking head. So let's play it from the start and we can get started. So I am a marriage and family therapist. My specialty has always been working with little kids, and that's been awesomeness throughout my career. It's been a pleasure to be working with young children and their families. And along the way, I ended up starting a clinic. So I actually have several other therapists who work with me at my clinic, and our specialty is working with kids actually of all ages, including a little bit older than their teens. And actually, my own practice has segued more into working more with adults as I have gotten creaky knees that have a hard time getting on the floor. But I still really enjoy doing parent coaching. And I also, right now, I do a lot of work actually in divorce and coaching people through collaborative divorce. The most important thing, though, about my experience in this topic is that I am a mom and I am a person in the world right now. You know, I'm actually a kind of a placid person. I'm very even-tempered, and that's just been my temperament my whole life. So I'm pretty sure I didn't experience true rage until I had children of my own. And, you know, I know that some parents are kind of embarrassed to admit that their kids make them angry, or embarrassed to admit that now, during all of the craziness in the world, we're angry with our kids a lot. And I just, if one message that I really want to share with you tonight is, if you're getting mad a lot right now, you're not alone. You're normal. You're among all of us. And I'm so glad that you're here, because I'd like tonight to be able to talk about anger, especially anger in the family, to see if we can figure out ways to do it better, to be human and yet figure out a way to create peace at home. There's so much in this world that's not in our control, that's crazy and weird and awful and scary. And wouldn't it be great if we could figure out how to create that really peaceful place within our own homes? So I'm going to start today with just spending just a tiny bit of time talking about what happens in our bodies when we're feeling strongly. Because I think it's important to the whole discussion. It's not, a lot of times we think of our emotions as being in our head, but they're not, they're in our whole bodies. And sometimes our whole interaction in the world gets hijacked by our bodies. So I think it's important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but and probably many of you know a lot more about this, and could do an entire 3-day lecture on what happens in your body when you're feeling strongly. And so I'm going to touch lightly on it, and only for the purposes of our discussion. And then we're going to dive into, what do you do about that? So I have this chart, and I'm sorry, it's got little teeny tiny print, and I just want to let you know that you do not have to read the tiny print on your phone right now. Um, I like the graphic because it kind of illustrates what happens with our bodies under stress. So when scientists are studying emotions, really what they're studying is levels of emotional arousal in the body. Your body is very nicely tuned up to react to danger in the world and to be looking for danger, to be a little bit worried, and then a little more worried, and then, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, right? So our body was made for a world that we no longer live in, where we would need to fight or run away when we're in danger. So it's set up for that other world, right? Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go through this in a kind of very surface level. You can see those two dotted lines in the graph there. Those represent the kind of normal everyday. You know, sometimes you're really calm because you had a nice walk or you had a nice hot bath, right? So you're kind of at the bottom of that little window of arousal. Or maybe you're just a little worried about what's going on in the world. Oh, okay, you're a little higher up in that, but you're still kind of in normal every day and you're not too upset. Yeah. And this is where we are mostly living most of our lives, we hope. And within that threshold, we have access to all of our entire human brain. You know, our brain developed over time. We've got our lizard brain that's just kind of keeping the lights on. We've got our mammalian brain that's acting on instinct and pattern and survival, for sure, that acts very quickly, in fact, when we think our survival is at risk. We've got our logical brain, our left brain, that's thinking about, well, if I did this, then what would happen? Yeah. And then we've got our wise brain, which was the last part of our brain to develop and is in our prefrontal cortex and sort of behind your eyes. That goes from fast to slow. So your survival brain acts really quickly. Logical brain kicks in a little bit later. Wisdom, you kind of have to be super calm before your wisdom can start to fire in your brain. Yeah. Now, you can see that jagged line is sometimes going outside of that threshold of normal. And it's going into a state which we sometimes call fight or flight. So when you pass, and it seems like there is like a threshold, that once you get past that threshold, you're into just survival brain, just acting on pattern, on instinct, on what you did before. This is kind of why when we get really upset with our kids, we say that thing that our mom said to us that we promised ourselves we were going to never say to our own children. It's because when we get into that really upset fight or flight, all that's there is pattern. All that's there is what we've heard before or what we've done before. Yeah? And you know this, that when we're in fight or flight and we're acting on instinct and we're mad, so we're yelling or we're kicking the cupboards, this is not necessarily the best thing for our relationships or for solving the problem. But we're kind of we're hijacked by our emotions in that moment to be only doing what we're in our survival brain to do. You can see in the graph, it has a little graphic, maybe you can't see that, but it's stuck on. So sometimes people just are living, and especially, in fact, actually, maybe culturally, we're all living at the top of the threshold right now. We're all looking at the news every once in a while and getting super activated. We're all worried about our own health, like every time we step out the door. So we're kind of culturally living at the top of the threshold, and it doesn't take that much to put us over the top. And living in that state of right at the top of the threshold, or actually in fight or flight, like all the time, is tremendously damaging to our whole bodies, our immune system, our ability to sleep, our ability to do a lot of things. So we want to not do that. We want to stay in the threshold. Yeah. There's one other state that I will just touch on briefly, and that's stuck on off. So that's the freeze state. And that's when it's so bad, you just go numb. People who've had something really bad happen to them can go into this state of kind of being dissociated. Victims of crimes will report feeling like they were up on the ceiling looking down and watching what was happening. Yeah. And that's another state that's pretty dangerous to be stuck in. And we want to be pulling ourselves always back into that threshold. Yeah. So here's what happened, so that's interesting. And there's a little bit more to it, which has to do with the chemistry. So there are hormones of emotion that your brain actually tells your body, oh, we need a little dose of our emotional hormones, kind of like every time you have to make a decision. Or every time you're faced with something that you're like, oh, that's a little scary, or that makes me angry or upset. Your brain sends out a little bit of those chemicals, and they go to really all of your internal organs. And they're preparing your body. It's like you're a rabbit in the forest and, I think I might smell bear. Yeah, boom, a little bit of stress hormones or emotional hormones go out. Oh, well, no, I'm pretty sure that's bear, right? And then, oh, a few more, right? And oh my gosh, I see the bear. I'm out of here. I'm in fight or flight. Yeah. So you can go out of the threshold. I think I didn't mention this before, so I'm coming back to it, because one bad thing happened and you're there. Or you can go out of the threshold because you've been stressed out all day and it was just one more little thing that took you out. Yeah. And what does that mean, took you out, in terms of what's happening in your body? It's that you reach a level of stress hormones in your body where your whole system goes, okay, it's time to panic. Yeah. And the stress hormones, I'm not going to get into the names of everything. They just kind of fall into two categories. There's the uppers, the ones that are giving you energy, like adrenaline. It gives you energy to fight or run away. And then there are the inflammatories, like cortisol, that are there to actually predispose you to heal after you get the injuries in the big fight you're about to have. And these hormones actually, so in modern life, what happens is we don't ever have a chance for them to go away. We had this little, oh, where the heck are my keys? Right? And then something else happened, and then something else happened, and those hormones never had a chance to dissipate. So they just keep building up in the body. So one of the side effects of this is that your blood supply goes to your arms and legs because your body's getting ready to fight or run away, right? So as you get more and more of these hormones in your body, you get more and more blood supply in your arms and legs, and not in your internal organs. So this is one of the reasons why when you're stressed out, you don't digest your food well. You end up with problems in your digestive tract because there's not as much blood supply going there. But the other really important internal organ that doesn't get as much oxygen when you're super stressed, when you're at the edge of your threshold or beyond, is your brain. So not only is your brain going into just survival, just pattern, just instinct, there's also just not as much oxygen there to be thinking about, maybe there's a different solution here. Yeah. The effect of the upper is also that it will keep you awake when you're stressed out. And the effect of the whole soup is that your immune system gets depressed. It's physically, really seriously, you don't have as many T cells, that very important little cells that go around fighting viruses and bacteria and stuff like that. You just don't have as many when you're stressed out. This is the irony of this whole experience, that we're sheltering in place in order to keep from getting the virus, but we're so stressed out, our bodies are actually more susceptible to the virus. It's a terrible paradox. And we got to figure out, what to do about that. So I want to talk, let's talk specifically about anger. In that, all of that graph and what I was talking about before, it could be any emotion. It could be just confusion. It could be just scared. It could be jealousy. It could be any emotion. Love will get you into the top of your threshold. But I want to talk specifically about anger, because different emotions, although the level of arousal thing is the same, it doesn't matter which emotion you're feeling, there are different little pieces of your body's reaction to different emotions that I think are important. So Freud, 100 years ago, talked about emotions as the expression of emotion as being cathartic. So when you express the emotion, you feel better. Yeah? And this is absolutely positively physically true for sadness. So if you're feeling sad and you don't, you hold it in and you don't cry, I'm not going to cry, right? You actually feel worse longer. And if you do cry, if you just let it out, if you just do it, just cry, there's hormones in your tears that help you to feel better, that help you to let it go. Yeah. Anger is actually not like that. Although it is definitely part of our culture to think it is, that what you're supposed to do when you're angry is express it. And then you get it out of your system. We talk about venting your anger as if you were a steam engine and that steam vent was there to keep you from exploding. And actually, the truth is that when you start to express your anger, it's escalatory. The more you express your anger, the more likely you are to explode. My favorite, the reason I have this brick wall here is because my favorite story about this is a study that they did years ago, and I heard about it years ago and I can't find it, so I can't give you a reference for it. But it was a really cute little study where they invited people in. They were studying anger, and they said, look, we're studying the expression of anger, and we have this case full of Coke bottles. This was a long time ago when Coke always came in bottles. Case of Coke bottles, and we have a brick wall. And it's really, really okay. In fact, what we want you to do is think of somebody that you've been mad at and really talk to them, say stuff to them, and throw a Coke bottle against the wall. Let's just really vent your anger. Let's express it. You know? So you can imagine there were people in this study who are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to throw a Coke bottle. But they convinced everybody. They said, you're going to get your $5 for being in this study. If you just throw one Coke bottle and you're done. So this is the results of this study. Everybody emptied the crate and asked for more Coke bottles. Anger is the opposite of cathartic. Anger is escalatory. The more you express your anger, the angrier you get, and the more and the bigger your expression of anger becomes. Now, we know that when we're expressing our anger in big ways, what happens to our relationships? Does that actually solve problems when we do that? Does that make people respect us and want to work with us when we're like expressing our anger? And the answer is no. And as you are in that anger for a really, really long time, what's that doing to your body? What's that doing to your body as all of those stress hormones are hanging out even longer? It's actually making you sick. So this is another big point. You don't have to express your anger. Please don't express your anger. For your mental health, expressing your anger is the opposite of what you need to do. I know that's a radical concept, but trust me, it's true. Yeah, it's totally great and okay and perfectly human to feel that anger and to feel it all the way. And expressing it by yelling and screaming and kicking the cupboards and firing people and shooting off that horrible email, right? Totally, totally, totally. If we could just like not do that anymore, that would be good. Okay. Now, that whole metaphor of if you don't vent your anger, it will explode. I think it's very interesting, and it's based on something that's really true. Because when you're feeling angry, it's because somebody's stepping on you, right? It's because there's a problem. And oftentimes, the first time the problem shows up, it's just a little irritating, right? So it's a problem that's showing up a lot and that you've tried to work on. You've tried to solve it and you're not solving it. And that's why you blow up. Because every time you experience, and you know this from every day with your children, right? That the first time that you went in the room and it was a total mess, you said, you guys, clean your room, right? And then later in the day, when you went in and they had done absolutely nothing and they're sitting there like slobs, you're like, dude, what is going on? Clean the stupid room, right? And it's only as this repeated experience that this problem is still there. And you're just reacting to it at a different level every time. And then you explode, yeah? So what I like to think about is that anger, that feeling that you can identify in your body. Oh, wow, I am super angry right now. That is like the dummy light in your car, that check engine soon light. It's a signal to you, to your wise brain, that you have a problem. It's a problem. And even if it seems trivial, like who cares if the kid's room gets cleaned today, grandma's not coming. It's a problem. And it's a problem that you need to solve. Because, I mean, I think all of our goals as parents is to create as much peace in our homes as we can. Okay, then even if it seems like this is something little, it's not little. It's causing a problem. It's causing you to be angry. That's enough. That's a problem that needs to be worked on. After you let go of that emotion, right? Because remember, when we're in the middle of feeling super mad, we're in our survival brains. We're not thinking about great new solutions, right? We're just doing, yeah? So later, and it's totally okay if right now you just did what your survival brain told you to do, but later, recognizing, oh, wait, okay, I blew up at my kids today. I feel bad about it. And it means there's a problem that needs to be solved. Am I calm enough now to think about that problem and figure out how can I solve that? Or do I need to take some more time? I mean, it's sometimes when we've been here for a really long time, it takes a really long time till we can get back down to that bottom of the threshold when we can have access to our wise brains so that we know how we can figure out how to solve the problem, how to do something different. And that working on the chemistry it's a whole thing, yeah? And there's some of it is about how do I get myself down to the bottom of the threshold, like once a day. This is Stanford researchers are doing a lot now about how actually a little bit of stress is good and you need to get down to 0 every day. So things that you do to just maintain at a lower level, I think are important for everyone. They're important for families for sure. And next fall, I'm going to do a whole talk about that. But some of the things that we can talk about today are just the things that help you to calm down. And when I did that, yeah, that's the out breath. Your nervous system is set up very interestingly. Every time you breathe in, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. And every time you breathe out, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's excite, relax with every breath. And when we're worried, when we're scared, how do we breathe? Yeah. And when it's all okay, nothing's wrong, how do we breathe? And you can do that on purpose. And you can do that in the moment. When you recognize, and see, unfortunately, it takes a wise brain to recognize I'm really upset right now. Right? So when you're really upset, that's offline. But later, you can recognize, oh, I really got really upset there. Oh, the thing to do right now is breathe out. This is a lovely thing to do with children, by the way. Could we just do this? It's a lovely way to start a dinner. It's a lovely way to start. Let's sit and read a book right now. Ah, yeah, yeah. You know, some people do the count to 10 thing. I'm okay with you counting to 10 as long as you don't hold your breath while you're doing it. And maybe count to 15 while you're breathing out. Yeah. And be aware that it's okay in the moment that you don't solve the problem. What you've been doing instinctively hasn't been working to solve this problem. It's okay to do it again and take some time then to think about, how do I solve this problem in a different way? Yeah. There's a lot of, I'll just make you a list. Laughter is really great. Seeing if you can have a sense of humor about whatever this problem is. Play is actually a really great thing to bring your system down to zero. But just consciously breathing and being alone for a bit, I think in the moment is the thing. Yeah. And recognizing, oh, I have to get all the way down to being not so upset before I even try to solve this problem. I'm probably going to spend a little more time on helping kids with stress because I think that's important too. All of the kids are stressed out right now. I think that your teachers will all tell you that. Some kids are more stressed out than others. Some kids, you know, in our clinic, we see a lot of kids who are really very anxious, and were very anxious before COVID and anything else that was happening. And actually taking them away from the very stressful school environment was really healing for them. They're loving it. They're loving all this alone time. Our little introverts are just in heaven now. They're really having a great time with it. And others are having a harder time, and others are just spinning around what's happening in the world right now. And some of the things that kids just do to naturally, instinctively, to reduce their stress just kind of aren't available right now, like playing with their friends. Like, you know, playing those great big imaginary games that take like 5 hours to unfold in the midst of getting a snack and playing chase, right? That's a lot of kids aren't getting that anymore. Exercise, you know, for kids, I would say especially elementary school age kids, the way they exercise is in play, right? They're playing tag. They're like, they got the ball and they're kicking it as far as they can. And they're going on those bars and running around. And, you know, for a long time, the parks had big yellow tape around them, right? So all of those things have been adding to the kind of chronic stress that certainly we're seeing at our clinic with kids. So what is good for kids to do? Run around with the Frisbee, run around with the ball. Take that dog for a really, really, really long walk. Walk everywhere. Oh, we need some milk. Let's walk all the way to the grocery store. Yeah, that's a really long way. Okay. Let's make it a game somehow. Yeah. I think in the moment, I do like to have kids have a place where they go, and we acknowledge in the family that that's your calm down place, right? And it's a very gentle, it's not, you're going to time out for 2,000 years as a punishment for whatever you just did. It's, wow, I can see that you're really upset right now. How about if you just go into the sewing room for a little bit and breathe a little bit, and when you're ready, come back. Yeah. Or how about if, you know, I see you're really upset right now, and I know it helps you if you walk up and down the stairs. So maybe that would be a good thing to do right now. Just walk up and down those stairs for a bit, and then we can talk about it. Yeah. I think complaining, I didn't talk about with adults, but I'll talk about it now. Complaining is actually a really great stress reliever. But you have to be complaining to the right person. Yeah. Because some people, when you complain, they want to give you advice and tell you how to solve the problem. And that actually turns out to be not that helpful. The people who are the best listeners when someone is complaining are people who really just listen and empathize. Oh man, that sounds awful. And then what happened? Oh my gosh, how did that make you feel? Oh, I have experienced that. If that was me, I would be off the charts mad about that. That's what we want when we're complaining. And that's what's really stress relieving. That's what brings our level of arousal all the way down, is when we have someone who's just listening and just understands. Yeah. It's so hard for us as parents to do this with our kids. I am so guilty of giving advice, and I know how hard it is because we know what the answer is. We know what would help. And truthfully, it's better. And if you can be conscious of it, just try it, just experiment with just listening. Just listening all the way. Just listening until they sigh. Okay, well, I guess I got to do my homework now. Yeah. It's amazing to watch, actually. They didn't need you to solve their problems for them. They don't really follow parental advice. I mean, some kids act as if they're going to, but and really in moments of when they're telling you about how strongly they're feeling, really just empathetic listening can be the best thing that you do for them. I'll tell you this story really quickly. I was giving a talk like this many years ago, and this woman raised her hand and said she had a story. And I said, tell me the story. And she told the story. And she told me later that I could tell it again. So she's an aunt of two little girls who are having a birthday party. The older kid is having a birthday party. And she can see that the younger kid is about to have a great big giant horrible tantrum. She just has seen this kid ramp up during this party. So she's a very wise aunt. She knows mom is busy. So she takes this little girl who's maybe 5 aside, right? And they sit down. And the aunt says, man, I wish this party was for me. So I call this granting wishes in fantasy. So aunt is expressing what she knows this little girl is feeling, which is a very deep jealousy. Yeah. But the aunt is expressing it as if it were her emotion. Yeah. I wish this party was for me. Yeah. And this little girl goes, me too. I wish this party was for me. And there were 400 guests and they all had a present just for me. And the aunt said, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be cool? I wish there were 500 guests and they were all for me. And we were on a train and the little girls, yes. And we were on a train to Disneyland. They just really brought this really great fantasy to life, right? And then the little girl sighed and said, yeah, well, I guess I better go help my mommy with the cake. And she was gone. It was done. The whole incident, tantrum averted. And I know that a lot of us would have been tempted. I would have been tempted in that moment to say, yeah, but it's not your party. So buck up, kid, and get with the program, right? But this wise aunt didn't do that. And it was a wonderful experiment and it worked really well. So that's something else that you can consider to try. For grownups, I think that there is a problem with complaining, which is when we complain, it does get rid of all of the energy around the problem. It does make you completely calm down. Sometimes you need that angry energy to solve problems. Yeah? I think all the great social justice movements of the world were started with angry people who used that anger for energy to get them over the risks and to go out and get stuff done. Yeah. So if you find that you are spending your time complaining instead of acting, I think that's a little warning light too, right? That maybe that complaining needs to be turned into action and really working at solving the problem. Now, unfortunately, there are 2 kinds of problems. There's the problems that you can solve, right? And there's the problems that you can't, that you have no control over. And there's a lot of problems like that right now. There are always a lot of problems like that. And actually, it is getting really mad about stuff that you are totally helpless about that is the thing that is most likely to give you a stress-related illness. So I think it's important to talk about this. There are some things that you actually really do not have any control over. And if you are finding yourself getting mad about that, that's on you. That's on you to solve. That's on you to take care of your own emotions. You know? And so let's talk a little bit about how you can do that. How can you deal with problems that you have no control over? I have this picture of a duck in the rain, because I think that sometimes for kids, kids are so into the metaphor that you can use metaphors to help them understand about problems that they can't solve. Could you let that problem wash over you like a duck in the rain? Right? A duck doesn't worry about the rain. The rain just washes off his feathers. Or could you be like a turtle and just pull in all of your arms and head, and just have whatever that mean person is saying just bounce off like a pebble hitting your shell, and just bounces right off? Yeah. For grownups, really trying to get that perspective, trying to get that, oh gosh, yeah, this is a problem I'm not solving, and therefore I'm making myself sick about it. So I need to do something different. Yeah. I see we have a few questions in the Q&A, Eric. Are there things that we should answer now, or should we wait for a bit?
So the first question that we got in the chat, going back to that first chart, how do you explain that for parents or children who are having anxiety and depression at the same time? So when they're experiencing two emotions on that spectrum?
Yeah, I think it's misleading to put depression down at the bottom. It is actually all the same thing. It's all too much helpless emotion. It's too much helpless emotion. And anxiety and depression just walk together in you can think of anxiety as coming first and then the big drop. But I certainly see a lot of depressed kids who are also anxious, right? They kind of bop between. So I don't know, I hope that explains it. There's a whole different thing that happens when we get into these stuck places. Yeah. And I think it's really important to know that in the last 20 years, since I've been a therapist, and certainly in the last 40 years, massive improvements in what we know about how to help with these actually very common in modern life problems of anxiety and depression. Healing from trauma, healing from anxiety and depression, just huge leaps. And when you are finding yourself, or your child is in a place of stuck on or stuck on off, that's the time to get some help, because there's really great help out there. Yeah.
So Beth, the other question was, is this being recorded?
It is, yes.
And then there are two more questions.
Okay.
So the next question is, so there's a difference between not expressing your anger and being passive aggressive. So that's part one. And then part two is, the family has a parent who's volatile and more angry, and there's another parent that is more passive aggressive, because that was what was modeled for them. Being the volatile one, they understand that they can't give their full voice to their anger, but how do you help someone understand how to not express it passive aggressively?
You have to sit down and say, there's a problem. Can we figure out how to work it out together? Yeah. Because so this is, people do express their anger in different ways, and no one way of expressing anger is better or worse than another. But let's recognize that, let's name it. We're both feeling angry. We're doing it in different ways, and it means that there's a problem. So instead of sitting on it and just, yeah, I'm not, and as a way of handling it, or yelling and screaming as a way of handling it, let's talk about what it is. What is it? And how can we solve it? Let's have a dialogue about that. I see that you're shutting down right now. And I know that when you do that, it's because you're feeling really angry. Are you angry at me? Can we talk about that? Right? So being proactive, realizing that it's not about there's a right way or a wrong way to express your anger. It's about that when you are expressing your anger, it means there's a problem. So let's dive into the problem. Yeah. And so actually this is apropos as we're talking about letting go. I think, you know, that for some problems that happen all the time that are not in your family, like tailgaters on the freeway, right? And, you know, that, so there's always going to be tailgaters on the freeway. And if you get mad at them, it doesn't make them stop, right? So you're not helping the world be a better place by being angry. It's just making you sick. And beginning to have a sense of humor about that can sometimes just give you enough distance to let it go, so that you're not carrying around stress that's toxic for you. Just getting a big perspective. Who's the comedian? He had this, never mind. I won't tell that story because I can't remember his name. Very famous comedian. Okay, I'll just tell it. He was talking about there's two kinds of people on the freeway. There's the maniacs, and those are the people who want to drive faster than you. And there's the idiots, and there's the people who wants to drive slower than you, right? There you go. Carlin. Bruce Carlin? And sorry, 60-year-old brain. Anyway, having a sense of humor can help. And I actually think that for letting go, one of the things that helps a lot is gratitude. So, and I think that when you're finding yourself furious in your family and you can't let it go and it's eating at you and you can't regulate enough to be thinking about how to solve the problem, this is a little trick. Try to think of what you're grateful for. Gratitude and anger, they just can't live in the same brain at the same time. And it's a really lovely way of helping your body to calm down. So think of what you're grateful for. Take that long out breath. Yeah. I think my concept of forgiveness is changing your idea about why people do things. So I'm not giving you a spiritual perspective on forgiveness. This is, I have another spiritual perspective, but this is my psychology hat on. Let's think about forgiveness as just changing your idea about why people do things. So, and I'll just go through a little step-by-step process for that. So you're recognizing that you have road rage, right? And it's not doing anybody any good. It's harming you. Okay, so that's the first step, recognizing, oh, I'm getting mad at a problem I can't solve. My spouse leaves the toilet seat up, and it's such a habit with them that is never going to change. I have tried everything in my repertoire, and that is never going to change. Yeah. So my getting mad about it only makes problems in our relationship over something that's never going to change. So, okay, then. This is a problem that can't be solved. So all I'm doing now is taking care of me. Now, the next step is a little tricky. Let's get into your idea about why they're doing it. You know, they're an idiot or a maniac. They're doing it on purpose just to make me mad. Yeah. What is your, sometimes it's unconscious what you believe about their motivation for doing this, right? But oftentimes that's it. That's why it's making you mad. When your kids are making you mad, it's because I told them and they're doing it anyway. Yeah. So uncovering what is your thought about why they're doing it. And then recognize that actually we don't know why people do things. Why people do things is really complex. I don't know why I do a lot of the things that I do. So for someone else to assume that they know why I do that thing, that's a little bit presumptuous, just saying. So what if our belief, our unconscious belief about why someone's doing something is wrong? It's just not true. We carry around in our unconscious a whole bunch of beliefs that aren't true. They're totally illogical. I don't know how they got in there. But oftentimes they got in there when we were really little and didn't understand the nature of reality. Okay, so let's just assume, let's just say for the sake of argument that your idea about the passive aggressive nature of that spouse who's leaving that toilet seat up, right? Maybe that's not true. So what would be it? You're making it up anyway. What would be a reason for that wouldn't make you mad? That requires some thought. And it has to be expressed positively. It has to be expressed in a, well, the reason they're leaving that toilet seat up is, I don't know, I can't think of a good one for this. Because they feel so comfortable in our house. Okay, I've made such a welcome, comfortable bathroom that it just feels great and comfortable to just leave the seat up. Yeah, whatever it is, you can come up with something, right? And at first you won't believe it. So the next step is to just keep repeating it. So it's good to come up with something small. For the freeway, you know, I like to think, oh, that person must have a serious emergency. So you have to kind of rehearse it, because actually, remember, we're dealing with our unconscious brain, our survival brain, which only remembers through repetition. So you have to repeat your new thought. And then you have to think, oh, I can't wait till this happens again, because I'm going to think my new thought. And then I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to be mad. And it doesn't matter because the world's not going to change anyway, but I'm going to be okay. Yeah. Now I will tell you a secret, which maybe I should just let you experiment with this and find it out, but I will tell you this secret anyway. Interestingly enough, this changes the world. That problem that you thought was unsolvable sometimes miraculously shifts when you let go of your strong feelings about it. I know it's a little woo-woo. I'm in psychology. I have to give you a little woo-woo every once in a while. And you can take that or leave it. Just experiment with it and see what happens. Okay. Now we're going to get into problems that you can solve. And I'm going to start with when you're angry at grownups. And I think probably most of you have heard about assertive communication. So there's a problem between adults, and you might try this really assertive thing to say, which is, when you do this, when you blow your nose at the table, it makes me feel a little grossed out, because in my family, it was the rule at the table that if you felt you had to sneeze, you had to go in the other room. Okay, I'm giving you silly examples. When you did this thing, it made me feel, because, right? That's the assertive phrase. And this is instead of you always, or you should, or you never, right? So we're trying to solve a problem here, right? So, and part of solving a problem is often to express feelings first, everyone getting a chance to express their feelings about what's going on, right? And starting out with, I think that there's a problem. When you do this, it makes me feel upset. I actually tell people not to say it makes you feel angry, because I think in our personal relationships, when you tell someone something they did made you angry, they immediately become defensive. And it doesn't matter if you're doing that within an assertive phrase, they still become defensive. So name that feeling underneath the anger, the frustration, the disappointment, because, right? So that's very nice. And oftentimes when you do that, people will apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that made you upset. Sometimes they'll come back at you. Well, I only did that because you did this. Yeah. Which is, this is the way relationships work. And that's fine. Now you can have a real discussion about it. Okay, so we both have feelings about this, and, we can trace back to however we want to trace back. What's the problem? Is there a way for us to do something differently so this doesn't come up again? Yeah. And, that can work. That can work great. That can work awesomeness. And sometimes people just continue to do the things that you don't like them to do. So, and in families, this is often the case, because You know, I think you can say stuff, but people are just, they get into habit and they don't take you seriously. Yeah. So I came across this example from Dear Abby, which this is the reason for the waste basket with the big arrow. This woman was very frustrated because her husband was leaving his underwear in the middle of the bedroom floor. And they had a good talk about it. He said he was sorry and he kept doing it, right? So it didn't, you know, that talk to solve the problem didn't actually solve the problem. So she decided to do what Dear Abby, I just love this. It was assertive action. So words are done. We're done talking about it. So what Dear Abby recommended was get a giant waste paper basket or a giant hamper, like huge, a giant red arrow out of poster board and put it in the exact place where he puts his dirty clothes and see what happens. Well, and it was great because it was funny. And yes, it worked. Of course it worked because it was funny. And her husband said, I get it. Okay, I totally get it. We don't have to do this anymore. I get that this is important to you and that I need to change a habit. Yeah. Let's go on to when people are angry at you. And this happens because, you know, it's really hard to navigate the world without stepping on people's toes. It's really hard to live together. It's really hard to shelter in place and not get irritated by each other's habits. Yes. And also not to be just like focused on, well, I need to do this and not realize that we're kind of stepping on the other person. Yes. And I think it's important to recognize that there is an art to having a really great apology. And it's important to just add that to the vocabulary of your family. What do we do when people are mad at us? And, you know, it's our bad, right? Do we fight and say, no, it's really your bad? Or do we take responsibility for the stuff that we've done? Do we just say, oh, I'm really sorry that you got upset? No. Or do we really take ownership? Oh, okay, I got to really, this is a case where I think we have to be the change we want to make in the world. That when we as parents really demonstrate how to do the really great apology, that transfers, kids learn, right? So the really great apology, do I have a slide about?
Ooh, Beth, you're muted.
Sorry, I was checking my slides and I muted myself instead. So the really great apology goes something like this. Tell me about what I did that has made you angry with me. I really want to hear all about it. So I understand when I did this, it made you feel this way. You know, I think if I were you, I would have felt the same way. I get it. I understand. And I'm going to commit right now to never doing that again. In fact, these are the things that I'm going to do to remind myself to not do that again. And this is what I'm going to do, the extra thing that I'm going to do to kind of atone for that mistake. Yeah, to make it better, to make it right. Yeah. It's really hard to make that kind of apology. And I think that that's something that changes the world. When you really do just listen. You really do take ownership. And it doesn't matter if you didn't mean to step on their toes, you step on their toes. And that deserves an apology and an attempt to not do that again. If this is a relationship that you cherish. Yeah. Okay, moving along. I pressed mute because I've lost my little, okay, here we go. So when you're angry at your kids, this is, I put the little check engine light here. This is a signal that there's a problem. In fact, it's probably a signal that there's a problem that you are trying to solve in the wrong way. And I see this all the time, that in our culture, the way we try to solve problems with kids is with words. No, don't do that. I told you not to do that. Don't do that, right? So this escalating words, this bigger and bigger sort of punishment of the words, right? And that can be enormously ineffective. And it can be effective sometimes, but not all the time. And I think that it's just something to be conscious of, I think, as a parent, when you find yourself doing the, don't do that, don't do that, don't, you know, the escalating. And I see this all the time at the dollar store. The dollar store is a great time to see really bad interactions between children and parents, because those kids just want those toys and those parents are just trying to say no, and escalating. And I think it's really important in those moments when you catch yourself doing that to go, okay, wait, this is not the way to solve the problem. Talking about it, using words about it, not solving it. So, what else could I do? And maybe not today, maybe not right now, because I don't know what to do. This is what I've always done and it's not working. I don't know what else to do. Yeah. We might have to do some research about that. I might need to talk to other parents who've experienced the same thing. I might need to talk to the kid's teacher. I might need to talk to my parenting partner. I might need to talk to my own mom, and just try to figure out what is a way to solve this problem that's not no. Yeah. I think it really just considering that assertive action is what's required. Okay, so maybe I should be talking less in this situation and just having action. I think kids really, really attend to action. And it can be small action, very, very small, right? It can be just a kind of oh, I noticed that you did get some of your room cleaned up. I'm looking forward to watching that room slowly get all cleaned up by the end of the day. Small. See, now that was words, right? But it could be just a small action of, oh, no, I'm sorry, we're not having lunch yet until the room is clean. Small, right? No great big yell. Just there's an action in the world that happens. Oh, yeah, why don't you go to your room until you're ready to come back? This is really small, right? Go to your room until you're ready to put your dish in the sink. Yeah. Just little rule about that. It doesn't have to be big, but it has to include, you know, the really sucky thing of you have to get up off your chair. I hate getting up off your chair parenting. I really like you just sit in your chair and you say, go take your dish to the sink, and they just go ahead and do it. And when that doesn't work, I think the thing, dummy light, oh yeah, there's a problem and I need to solve it. And words are not the answer here. Some kind of action, small action, not big, right? Because assertive action is small. If you act big, then you're starting a war, right? Then your child is so upset at the big action that they're not paying attention to this is what they need to be doing, right? So small, assertive, maybe even funny action, right, is what's required. And I think it's also really important to consider what works. You know, when we're being logical and using our logical brain to solve the problem, and we're considering what the new family rule ought to be about this particular thing, the test is not how the kids react in the moment emotionally to whatever the rule is. The test is whether they follow the rule. The test is whether the rule worked. Yeah, that's the important thing. So act, but act small. Stop when you see that you're doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah. And take some time and come up with a rule that's going to work. And if it doesn't work, take some more time, come up with a different rule. Yeah. Okay, this is a good time for more questions.
So one of the questions was, so when your kid is angry with you for parenting, like reminding them they need to shut down their computer and have a shower, it's really hard to sincerely apologize. And do you have any comments about that?
Yes. Well, yeah, you're not going to apologize for their behavior, right? And it's a problem. And this is a huge problem of our culture right now, that our kids are addicted to their screens and they do not want to get off. So I could do a whole hour on this one. Any kind of gaming, much of what kids do online activates the dopamine system in the brain, just like other addictions, overloads the dopamine system. Nothing else is fun except what they've been doing on their computers. So yeah, you just took away the crack from the drug addict. So I think it's a serious problem. And when you are finding that your children are having huge tantrums whenever you limit the screen time, that's time to take some action, because we've got an addiction going, and it takes some withdrawal in order to make things. And I am seeing an entire generation of children getting addicted to their screens because there's nothing else to do right now. So I don't know. Sorry, I could go on and on about that one. No, you don't need to apologize for doing good parenting. You can't apologize for blowing up, right? Because that's not when you're at your most effective as a parent. You're at your most effective when you're calm and laying down the rules, and there's a consequence for that. Yeah.
Got another one for you.
Yeah.
This one says, I've been angry about my child's lies. I've tried to forgive and build trust, but the lies keep coming. I'm having less ability to bounce back. I'm not sure how to get out of that anger.
How old is your child? I guess we can't do that interaction. I would stop asking your child the kind of question that they would lie about.
They're 11.
11, yeah. So, yeah, I can go a couple different directions with this. Most of the time, children lie about things where they're needing to take responsibility for something. So sometimes this comes up with, well, did you spill the milk, right? And then they say, no, it wasn't me, right? And that is natural and normal. And it's really, really hard for adults to take responsibility for their own behavior, even harder for children. So when we get into a case where a child is lying a lot, I think, look at what is the situation that they're lying about? Are they lying in order to avoid responsibility? In which case we just don't ask the question, I see that you spilled the milk. The consequence is that you need to clean it up right now. I didn't spill the milk. Well, I don't care. You need to clean up the milk right now. Yeah. So that you stay out of trying to make them take responsibility. Some kids are lying, are making up a fantasy world about what's really happening with them. And in that case, I think really they need some help about that. So it would be a good idea to get this 11-year-old into some counseling with somebody who can help her to kind of get a grip on what's real and what's not. And I totally get that part of what's going on here is, mom or dad, I don't know who, is that your anger is playing a part in this dynamic. And so I love that you asked this question. And it is something to really think about and ponder. How can I let go of this? And it starts with, what do I think is the reason that my child is lying to me? And can I change my idea about why? Okay. And I think that will help. Watch it again, look at that slide, contact me, and I'll write down the steps for you of making it conscious, coming up with a different explanation for the why, repeat it over and over again out loud so your whole brain can hear it. Then look forward to the next, I can't wait till the next time she lies because I'm going to think my new thought about why. Okay. All right, give that a try. And I have my email is right there, and contact me if you want to talk more about that. Okay. Yeah. We're at 9:08. Do we have time for one more question, or we need to wrap it up? What do you guys think?
Yes, we definitely have more time for questions.
Okay. Okay.
So here's one that has to do with the pandemic. My 8-year-old child sometimes becomes angry at his parents because of the frustrations of the pandemic, such as not being able to socialize with other children. I feel terrible for our kid. but there isn't much we can do. During normal times, we'd set up extra play dates or something. What are you advising parents to do during these COVID times with these lonely kids?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, one thing you can do is just grant that wish and fantasy. Oh, I wish I could play with my friends too. Because I know we all do. Yeah, so your child is expressing this. How come I can't go see my friends? And you can go right back, really express your empathy for that. This sucks. It's just not fair. I wish we could have 200 friends over at our house right now and have a really great time playing, right? So sometimes what the kid needs to do is just complain, and to have you really listen and really understand and really show with your whole body that you get it. You get how frustrating this is. So that's one thing. I think this is a time for us as the grownups, as the parents, to also create a little playtime with our kids. They're not getting it with their peers, and you know, especially your little kids, your elementary school age kids, just creating a time for some kind of imaginary play and just saying, you know what, let's play dolls, right? I'm here, let's go play, let's play with that Barbie. I'm here for the next 20 minutes till the alarm goes off, let's just play. Yeah. It's, you know, or let's throw that ball in the backyard. And I know that parents of children, young children right now are just overloaded. You've got a lot to do. And even just a little time that they can count on, that you'll just play with them, I think is helpful. I know that some families are coming up with other solutions, like creating a pod of another family with kids the same age, just because they need the kids to be able to play. So, you know, there may be some other creative solutions as well. And yeah, it sucks. It sucks big time. It sucks for everybody. And we're all kind of worried about it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Do you have time for more questions, or do you want?
I have time. Do you want to do another 5 minutes and we can do more questions?
That would be perfect. Yeah, let's do 5 minutes.
Okay.
I like this one here. I think this is something that a lot of people have to deal with. My spouse has anger management issues, never apologizes, and refuses to see someone. It's hard to create peace at home in this situation. What can be done to help everyone in the family?
Yeah, that's a very tough situation.
It's a hard one.
Yeah. And I think it does require problem solving on a pretty big level. Your instinct of getting him into counseling is a good one. And actually you could just go yourself, just to learn some really good strategies for assertive action. It's a very delicate dance to have assertive action when you're living with someone who is, you can think of it as that person is living at the top of their threshold and has deeply ingrained habits of what to do when in fight or flight, and not a lot of control over that, really. Really figuring out assertive action during times of calm, you know, when everybody's in the threshold, it's a complex dance, and I would really encourage you to go talk to somebody who has some experience with this. You don't have to wait for him to go into counseling. You can go into counseling yourself to figure out how to deal with this problem. So, sorry, I don't have a quick answer to that one. It's a tough situation.
Here's another one. I find the anger is less between parents and kids, but more between parents because of the differences in our parenting styles are really exposed when we are all together 24/7.
Yep. Believe me, I'm seeing a lot of parents in my office about this exact same issue. And it's, you know, it's great. You know, when they talk about being on the same page, really, literally, find a book, find an outside authority, and run some experiments. So, okay, there's this issue with the kid. We have a really different idea. And probably the idea that we each have about how to handle the situation came from how our parents handled it with us, right? So, we could do a scientific experiment. Let's try 2 weeks doing it your way. You know, and let's just see if that solves the problem, in which case, great, we're done. Let's try 2 weeks doing it my way, or let's read this book about this, or go to this expert or whatever, and try this way and see if it works. Most of the time when parents come to me and they're at, you know, I think of it like a teeter-totter, right? Like a seesaw. And one parent is on this end of the seesaw and one parent's on the other end of the seesaw. And both of them are saying, if you would just come to my side, we could do the fun thing here, right? If you just agree with me, right? And actually what's necessary, you know this from your actual time on a seesaw, if you had actual time on a seesaw, that what is needed in a case where the seesaw is stuck is for one person to move. And then it changes the fulcrum and you start to be able to go back and forth again. So I would say, don't wait for your spouse to change. Figure out if there's a way for you to move in, and to treat this as a scientific experiment. What works is what's important, not who's right. It's what works that's important. So let's just try to figure out what works. And if neither of the things that our parents used to do work, then maybe we need to consult someone else or figure something else out. It's often that both parents are actually right. They just needed to walk in a little bit and see the middle course, to see that, oh, that actually works. Yeah. So.
Okay, Eric, I think you have one more.
Yeah, so I'm going to combine a couple of questions, Beth. So this is all about teenagers. So A, how do we get them off their screens? How do we, so your encouragement of, you know, taking some time to play with the younger children, how do you try to build that relationship with the teenagers and kind of give them that socialization, even if they don't want to be your friend right now?
Yeah. Yeah, getting them off their screens is really challenging. I think with teens, it's more, it's not a, like you create the rule, it's more of a discussion. Because, you know, truthfully, what's funny is there's this juxtaposition of, I want to spend all my time on my screen and I'm bored. And it's both things are there at the same time. And I think it's just really important to talk about it, to just open up the conversation and just go, you know, I've noticed that you're on your screen all the time, and that when it's time to get off the screen, this happens every single time. There's this great big giant, you know, reaction. I'm wondering if it's healthy for you to be on the screen all the time. And just, you know, just talking about it. And because with a teenager, you have to get buy-in that it's a problem, right? You do. And you might have to point a few things out. Like, I noticed that your sleep rhythm is all off, your grades are going down, whatever it is that can lead to a, you know, a deeper discussion. But no, we really do have to talk about this. You can create rules with teens, and you can do it just completely without even talking about it. You can just turn off the internet. And that's a very sort of thing to do. You know, to be very clear, the internet goes off at a certain time, and then it does go off, and then they can't argue with you to make it go back on again. That's just the rule, right? Yeah, building relationships with teens is it can be really a challenge. Sometimes it helps to have a project. You know, to have a project that they're interested in, you're interested in too, and you know, and just do that project together. I saw an article in the paper this morning that Americans are totally getting into hunting now because it's something they can do in the woods. Maybe we could do hunting with a camera. We can have that be a father-son activity, or is building something or cooking something. My sister was great with this with her kids. She just let them just do the kitchen, right? And it was like the kids just took responsibility for, okay, it's my night. And everybody tried to outdo each other with their gourmet meals. I mean, how fun is that? But you know, just figuring out what's interesting to your kid and just figuring out if the two of you can do a project, a side by side. Much harder to do a face-to-face interaction, but if you can do a car ride or like a really long car ride or a project that you're doing, you know, side by side together, sometimes that can lead to that, you know, just comfortable being together, not insisting on conversation. When my kids were a teenager, I had 3 boys and golf was it. You know, I loved taking them golfing because I had 6 hours of time for things to come up, right? So some kids are really into animals and encouraging that and being there with them when they're taking care of animals also can be a fun activity. So, yeah.
Hey, well, thank you, Beth, for coming and being with us tonight.
You're very welcome. It was a delight for me. And I always tell people, and people do not take me up on this, but if there's a question that you have that I can answer by email, just email me and I'm happy to. So I know that some of you didn't get your questions answered, so, or didn't get them answered fully enough. So don't be shy. Do contact me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay.
Yeah, we appreciate that, Beth. That was great. And thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom. I know I've seen myself in some of the comments that you've made, and I really feel like this was an evening that was very well spent, and I will be able to use some of the things that you shared and taught us tonight. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for everybody else who came and joined us. I'm sure that you were able to get something from the wisdom that Beth shared as well. Please join us next Wednesday, December 2nd at 7 p.m. when we will host Lena Canzotti speaking on mental health and distance learning for K-12 students. Stay safe, everyone, and good night.
Take good care.
Thank you.